What is going on today, everybody? Welcome back to Fix It Garage, and we're finally back in our shop. So as you guys saw in the last video, we have the shop back and we have our office next door, but it is now time to start doing some actual work in the shop. And what better car to start with than the CRV? This car you guys have shown a lot of love and support for on the channel, so we're gonna go ahead and we're actually gonna get some work done on it. So what all do we need to do today? Well, I'll show you guys. So if you guys don't remember, in the last video, we saw that our power steering pump was leaking. The motor mount down there, the mount rubber is collapsed and it's actually touching, so we get a pretty gnarly vibration. And then back here, our Vtec solenoid back there, it's leaking a little bit. So we've got a brand new power steering pump, a brand new motor mount, and a brand new Vtec solenoid gasket. I'm gonna put an asterisk next to the pump because it is some kind of reman pump. As you can see here, here's our new replacement power steering pump. It is painted black, which I'm not a fan of. Pulley's not on it. This is a very much reman pump. No idea how good it's gonna be. The problem is, to buy an OEM power steering pump, it's close to $1,000. For a pump, that pump was 200 bucks. I have no desire to spend $1,000 on a power steering pump on a car that's worth maybe $5 on a good day. 1/5 the value for a pump is ridiculous. Unfortunately, there were no really good brands available when I bought it. At the time, through where I work, we couldn't find a top tier brand, but this will work. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put that pump in the car along with a new motor mount and a Vtec solenoid. Before we get started on the video, I wanna thank you guys all for the love and support on the channel while we've been struggling to bring content while we haven't had a shop. You guys have been showing all kinds of support on the videos, smashing like buttons, watching videos. I appreciate all of you guys. That is how you guys show support to me. That drives me to keep making these videos. And as always, if you guys want to support the channel, all you guys got to do, subscribe. It's totally free. Put these videos on in the background. Just let them run to help that YouTube algorithm. Maybe smash a like button or leave a comment here and there. That's all the support you guys got to show. Totally free, and it helps me and my channel out a ton. I appreciate all of you guys. Be sure also to go check out my live streams. I am going to start live streaming more now that my office is looking as good as it is. We're going to try to live stream a bunch. Now that's enough of me jibber jabbering about being all sentimental and stuff. Let's get working on this CRV. All right, so we're replacing the power steering pump and the motor mount, and since they're right next to each other, we're just going to do them at the same time. First thing we're going to do is move this out of the way so we can see. You can see all of our bolts are down here for the motor mount. And then our pump bolts with two 12mm bolts over here. And then down there is the tensioner. So the ideal way to do this is we will unbolt our motor mount, which will allow the engine to move up and down. We can move it up, take the tension off of this belt, so we can remove the drive belt, then undo the two bolts of the power steering pump. I'm also gonna remove this just so we don't scratch it. Super straightforward. Let's get you guys set up, and I'm gonna start taking all of this stuff apart. right, the power steering pump is off along with our pulley up there. So to get the mount off, it was 3/17s. Now on this long post here for this stud, that nut can be kind of interesting. What I like to do is set the 17mm socket, long socket on here. So like what I'll do is I'll take the socket, I'll set it on there on the nut like that. And the end will usually stick up just a little bit, just enough to where I can stick the impact gun on there or a ratchet and break it loose. That has always been my method to get that one to come loose. We've got a jack here supporting the engine. That way it doesn't fall out of the car. So that's what we did there. Then we had the 3 14mm bolts here, plus this 10mm nut, or 10mm bolt here for a ground. Motor mount came right out. That left us room to get our 14mm ratcheting wrench in here to release the tension on the tensioner. And then unbolt our power steering pump, which was 2 12s there and there. And then we took the 19mm pulley bolt off. So the power steering pump is now completely unbolted. Now we need to disconnect our lines. On an OEM pump, this plastic piece comes on it. On this car, it did not, so we're gonna have to unbolt this 10 here. These 2 10s, that'll take the hoses off. We're gonna pack a bunch of rags around it because it's gonna make a mess. I also brought my Tubbo plugs, which is a great thing to have. If you've got a bunch of like plugs you get with new parts, keep them and save them for the future so you can plug things when you disassemble it. Luckily, the used pump, or the reman pump came with a plug here and a plug here. So I'm gonna use this plug to plug the port on the side of the power steering pump. And then we just have to plug this hose, trying to make as little mess as possible. I like to take this reservoir and stick it down below the pump. So hopefully this hose will drain backwards into the reservoir. So we're gonna go ahead and set you guys up. I'm gonna work on getting this thing completely out of the car and I'll check back in with you guys once it's out. All right, so now we've got the pump and the motor mount completely out of the car. So let's kind of take a look what we got going on. All right, so here we have the 2 mounts. Here's our brand new OEM one from Honda and our old one. So when I said this mount was collapsed and it wasn't functioning anymore, this pad right here is like a touch pad almost. This motor mount was making contact with it all the time. When these mounts are good, this and this should not be touching, and they were touching. So here's our new mount with a new hydraulic mount in it. This should hold up a lot better. That is why we are replacing this motor mount, is because of the fact that this one was collapsed with the weight of the engine. Now with the new mount in the car, this will no longer be touching and it will sit up correctly, which should also help reduce vibration. Good motor mounts help isolate the vibrations of the engine so you don't feel them in the car. Right now I can feel them in the car. The engine's not misfiring, but engines do have a lot of vibration in them. And motor mounts help so you don't feel it, but unfortunately we are, and that's the mount that I traced it to as being bad because it's what we call collapsed. Power steering pumps. We've got our 2 pumps here. The old one sitting right here, you can tell she was leaking a lot, like a lot. So this is all bad. That seal was leaking. However, I am breaking one of my own rules on the new pump replacement, other than the fact that it is one of these rebuild ones. I don't have the O-rings. So when you do it, there's an O-ring here and there's an O-ring here. We are reusing the old ones because my dealer didn't have them in stock. So I don't have the O-rings. I will put them in if they are leaking. However, if you replace a power steering pump at home, please get new O-rings. I'm setting a bad example by not doing it because I need to have this thing done today, but you should always buy the O-rings and have them ready before you start doing the job. That's where I messed up. It happens sometimes. We're gonna put it together. If for some reason it's leaking from one of those O-rings, I will get it changed after the fact. And if it's leaking, of course, I'm gonna tell you guys right away. I'm not gonna hide it. But with that being said, it's time to put the pulley onto the new pump and throw the pump in the car and get everything hooked back up. This is the part where we can start putting this part of the engine back together. All right, just like that, look at that. Power steering pump back on, fully bolted together. However, this job is not fully done. We have to bleed the power steering system. Right now, that pump has like no fluid in it. We need to bleed the system before we can drive the car. Now, we're not gonna bleed it yet because we don't have our motor mount in and we still have that Vtec solenoid gasket to change. And I don't wanna start building up oil pressure in the vehicle until after we change it. It's already gonna make a small mess. I'm trying to prevent us from making a big mess. So next thing we need to do is we need to get the motor mount back in, which is 3 14mm bolts to put it back into the hole. Then we put our top bracket on, which is 3/17, 2 nuts and 1 bolt, and then the 10mm ground bolt that goes on the top of the bracket. So set you guys up. Let's get that back on. Overall, putting that pump in, super easy job to do. This is something you can do in your driveway. As you can tell, I don't even have the car lifted off the ground, so not very hard to do, but let's get that pump back on. All right, look at that. We're fully reassembled. Now it looks like the mount is doing weird stuff. That's just an outer coating that comes off that's on the rubber because they paint the mount. So that's paint coming off of the rubber. However, we can do our quick little mount test. We can take our piece of cardboard. So that's thicker than a piece of paper. And this should slide in between these two things. And look at that. It slides in between, which means that these are no longer touching. Before, you couldn't even get a piece of paper through there. So now we get cardboard. So that's a win. The mount is in, the pump is on. We still need to bleed the power steering system, but we're not done yet. We have one more part to put in. With the power steering and the motor mount done, it's time to move on to our Vtec solenoid gasket. Where is that, you ask? Well, on a case series, it's back here, buried underneath the hood. So it's not gonna be super easy to show you guys, but I'm gonna do the best I can to try to get some light back there. Things to know about the Vtec solenoid: it's held in with 3 10mm bolts, and when you remove it, it can leak oil, so you need to be ready to clean up an oil mess, either underneath the car or directly underneath the valve. We're gonna try to catch it all right underneath the valve. So I'm going to try and set it up. Worst case scenario, I'll get it out. I'll show you guys where the bolts are on the back of the block and on the Vtec solenoid, how to replace the gasket. We'll put it back in. We'll have the job done. Let's get to work. Solenoid is now removed. Let me try and show you guys what's going on back here. So, back here, if I can get the light, there, those three holes right there, that is the Vtec solenoid ports on the block. And then you can also see 3 holes in kind of a triangle. Those are the 3 bolt holes that it goes in. So it's 3 bolt holes. You have this connector that's right here in your view, and then one that's kind of back over there, that gray guy. Those are your 2 connectors on top of the solenoid, and then there's a clip that also clips in. Moving over here so you can see it, the oil ports on the block feed these 3 holes. Here are your 3 bolts. Your gasket goes in here, and you have your 2 connectors on top. That is what makes up your Vtec solenoid gasket. And as you can see, this one was leaking a bit, so that's why we were replacing the gasket. So here's our old gasket. It's actually not in as bad a shape as I thought. It's not full plastic, but it's not soft rubber. Here's our new gasket. We'll put it in place with comes with a new strainer as well. And then I like to put a little bit of Silglide on it. That helps hold the gasket in place while I install it on the car. This will help prevent it from falling off. So now it just goes on in the reverse order. What I'll do is I'll stick this bolt in the solenoid and I'll hold it there, and I'll kind of like use that as my way to find the first hole that it bolts in, because you can't get your head back there. You're basically installing this via braille. So you have to kind of like feel for it and get that first one in. Once this one's started, you can rotate it kind of like on its axis, find the second and third bolt holes, and then tighten it all down. All right, look at that. New Vtec solenoid gasket installed. Vtec solenoid reinstalled back in the car. we can call that job done. We'll check it for leaks when we're bleeding the power steering system. Speaking of the power steering system, it's time to bleed it. Now, there are different ways to do it. There's right ways and wrong ways. I'm gonna do a way that's more frowned upon, which is I put fluid in the reservoir, I start the car, and I go left to right, and I just keep re-topping off my reservoir. When I do a full steering rack, that is not what I do, but because I'm doing a pump, I'm less worried. I've done it before. It's not the correct way. We should be jacking up the front end, filling it with fluid, going lock to like get the air out. But what we're gonna do, we're gonna open up the garage door to let even more heat in. It's hot today. We're gonna add fluid to the power steering reservoir, start the car, and as it sucks it down, we'll keep adding it, and when it kind of stabilizes, then we'll start going lock to bleed it, and till it stops taking any fluid down. And at that point, the steering system will be bled, and all of our work for today will be finished. So, set you guys up, let's get this power steering system bled. You guys can kind of see what I do. I did get a little oil on the floor, I think. Power steering system is now fully bled and it is working perfectly. It feels so much better than before. It's not any stiff at all. It actually feels great. So we'll go ahead and take our funnel out of here. If I can find a rag, take our funnel out. We can put our reservoir cap back on. We can put our engine cover back on. Like so. Bingo. All right, we've got it all done, up and running. Everything is now working. And of course, if you are working on your own car, the last thing you need to do is take it for a test drive. Make sure that everything works on your test drive and check the car for leaks underneath. I looked, no leaks, everything's good. So this car is now fixed and we're ready to put my parts runner back out on the road, which actually my wife's been driving, so we can get her car back out to her. She can start driving it. It needs a bath, but that's coming in a future video. But this thing's done. If you try doing this on your own, remember, do it at your own risk. It's your car, it's your problem if you mess up. I've shown you kind of the right direction, but if you mess it up, that's your guys' problem, not mine. I'm not claiming that this is a step-by-step instructional video. I do have the steps in how to do it, but you always need to consult service manuals or take it to a shop before having it worked on. If you feel comfortable doing it yourself, go right ahead. If not, take it to a shop, have a professional take care of it. Don't do something you're not comfortable with. That's always my motto. If you're not comfortable with it, take it to a shop, save yourself headaches, time, and money. And remember that if you mess up, it's your guys' own fault for messing up. You can't sit here and blame me. But that is enough of that. I want to thank all you guys for watching. As always, if you guys like what you saw, don't forget to smash the like button, leave some comments down below, and subscribe so you guys can see more content with the CRV and any other projects that we get in here. Now that the shop is back, we can maybe start doing some more work in here, hopefully, depending on how things go. Hopefully we get some more projects in here, but that is going to do it for today, guys. I want to thank all of you for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.